believe Mr. Modi was involved in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar?
Well, first off, there is a legal process that is literally underway and quite advanced in Canada, and it's never appropriate to make comments in any respect with respect to those legal processes.
But with respect, if you cannot say no, why invite him here?
I gave, with respect, I gave you an answer that is appropriate to someone in my position.
But there is a possibility?
I will give you the same answer to any legal process.
That was Prime Minister Mark Carney today being pressed about inviting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the G7 summit this month in Kananaskis, Alberta. He was grilled because of the ongoing diplomatic tensions between the two countries. Now, the invite was made during a phone call between the two leaders this morning, and it comes as the federal government seeks to strengthen ties with other large economies. Now, in a statement on X, Modi said, quote, "Canada will work together with renewed vigor, guided by mutual respect and shared interest." But the invitation is sparking concerns, especially in the Sikh community, as the RCMP continues its investigation into the killing of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. You'll recall that he was shot and killed 2 years ago in Surrey, BC. Now, months later, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused agents of the Indian government of being involved in the murder. India has rejected those allegations, claiming they've seen no evidence. Diplomats from both countries were eventually expelled. And late last year, the RCMP said that it had evidence linking agents of India's government to homicides and other criminal acts in this country. Joining me now to talk more about the invite and the reaction is former senior advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Supriya Dwivedi. Thanks so much for being here, Supriya.
Pleasure, Mike.
You were there during those tensions between Canada and the Modi government. So you've been very critical about this move as well on social media. What do you know that most Canadians don't, which leads you to believe that the Prime Minister inviting Modi is a bad idea?
Look, I mean, I'm not about to spill the beans on top secret intel briefings I would have been privy to during my time. But I think what's publicly available and everything that you just ran in terms of the intro there should be clear to Canadians. I mean, these are allegations that have been confirmed by the RCMP in terms of what we are alleging, which is the transnational repression of the Indian diaspora, specifically members of the Sikh community in Canada. And that includes the use of these organized criminal networks, such as the Bishnoi network, to carry out these arsons, homicides, and shootings against Sikh Canadians who are critical of the Modi government.
And he was pressed on some of those matters, but when asked why India was invited, Prime Minister Carney said, as the fifth largest economy and the most populous country in this world, it is central to a number of discussions on critical minerals, energy security, and the digital future. So Mr. Carney believes that they should be there. Well, at the same time, he underlined that they're still having discussions about law enforcement and security concerns. Do you believe that both things can be done at the same time?
I think they can in the abstract, of course. Both things can be done at the same time. And, you know, diplomacy is hard, and it does mean making difficult and pragmatic choices, right? However, nothing we have seen from India thus far has signaled in any substantive way that they are willing to cooperate. We haven't seen any sort of contrition from Mr. Modi or anybody that represents him in the fact of any of these allegations. So I understand what Mr. Carney, I understand the thinking behind it. However, the message that this largely sends to members of the Indian diaspora, and again, especially the Sikh community here, is that folks that are critical of Modi, well, too bad, trade with India is just simply more important than their lives. And by the way, not all Canadian lives are equal.
And you went on to say on social media that it will be difficult, incredibly difficult, to take anything this government says on transnational repression and foreign interference seriously, given this pivot. But at the same time, I sort of come back to that point of trying to do two things at the same time, some people would sometimes argument that it's better to try and exert pressure on someone if they're sitting at the table beside you rather than pushing them away. What do you think of that?
Sure. Again, that's a very a good argument to be made. However, there's nothing that's being said right now that gives us any indication that that's actually what's going to be done. And let's not forget that the public inquiry into foreign interference told us that India is the second most active foreign actor when it comes to undermining Canada's institutions, coming only behind China here. And I think we also need to keep in mind that what is being alleged here by our law enforcement is that there are very high-ranking members of the Indian government that are involved, including India's current Home Minister, Amit Shah, who is known to be, Modi's second in command, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm not discounting any of that. And I guess I just ask it with the backdrop of how a number of communities are trying to turn to India as an alternative to trading with China because of those difficulties there. Even as the Liberal government had in 2022 this new Indo-Pacific strategy that launched, and it went in that direction as well.
For sure. I'm not discounting any of that again. And I, totally get the notion that, we're in a changing world, particularly if you look at what's happening between us and the States. We need more trading partners. All of that makes sense. But I would just also ask folks to consider the date today. So the Carney government decides to come out with this announcement today. Today is June 6th. Do you know what else happened on June 6th? Well, in 1984, the Indian Army stormed the Golden Temple. So the fact that the Carney government chose this day in particular to make this announcement tells me a couple of things. One, that Sikh caucus wasn't consulted or, given a heads up, because if nothing else, they likely would have flagged the date. And the second thing I would point out is that the G7 is going to be taking place during the 2-year anniversary of the death of Mr. Najjar being gunned down in that parking lot of that Gurdwara in Surrey. So all of that makes sense in the abstract of what you're saying, but in practice, what this goes to show is there wasn't really any heads up or any consultation given, and quite frankly, there wasn't any consideration given to how this would be perceived, and it's basically, well, my way or the highway.
Right. Okay, Supriya, we're going to have to leave it there. Really appreciate this. Former advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Supriya Dwivedi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Anytime, Mike.